You're listening to Coupled With, the podcast that helps you take the guesswork out of feeling seen, heard, and valued in your relationship. If you've ever felt stuck in the same arguments, struggled to stay connected, or wondered how to better communicate with your partner, you're in the right place. I'm Dr. Rachel Orleck, a couples therapist and coach, and together, we're going to make relationships make sense. Let's dive in. You know that moment when you catch yourselves mid-argument and think, didn't we already have this exact fight? It's the same tone, same roles, same ending where both of you feel unseen. Every couple has a signature loop. In emotionally focused couples therapy, we call them negative cycles, and Sue Johnson maps 3 big ones in Hold Me Tight, her signature book. They look different on the surface, but underneath, they're all protests of disconnection. When love feels shaky, your nervous systems stop reaching and start protecting. The dance begins before words ever leave your mouth. You say something sharp, they shut down. You follow them. Now both of you feel miles apart in your own kitchen. You're not fighting about the dishes. You're fighting about disconnection. Every couple has a loop, a choreography your bodies know by heart. The moment you feel threatened, protection kicks in. It's not weakness, it's wiring. So here's the truth. You don't have to like your loop to learn from it, but you do have to stop confusing the loop with love. You're not failing at communication. You're trapped in protection. And once you see the pattern, you can finally start to change it. You know that moment when you both know it's coming? The sigh, the tone, the tension? You can practically script it. Every couple has a signature fight loop, and Sue Johnson has mapped the 3 most common, which are called Find the Bad Guy, the Protest Polka, and Freeze and Flee. They all share one thing in common. When love feels uncertain, our nervous systems trade connection for protection. The first loop is Find the Bad Guy. This is the blame tango. Both partners turn into prosecutors, armed with evidence. You never listen versus you always overreact. Anger covers fear. Attack feels safer than admitting hurt. Inside, each person is really saying, I need you to see me. But it comes out as accusation. Nobody actually wins here. It's just 2 nervous systems fighting for safety while terrified of being the only one who cares. Then there's the protest polka. One of you pursues while the other withdraws. You raise your voice to close the gap. They shut down to survive the noise. You say, talk to me. And they say, stop yelling. And around you go. The pursuer fears abandonment. The withdrawer fears failure. This is heartbreak disguised as stubbornness. One reaches harder, the other disappears faster. Neither realizes they're dancing the same desperate choreography of protection. And finally, there's Freeze and Flee, the quietest and most deceptive loop of all. I once worked with a couple who hadn't had a real fight in years. They prided themselves on staying calm. But underneath, they were exhausted. They learned to keep peace by keeping distance. They didn't yell, but they didn't reach. They just coexisted. It looked peaceful but it was actually burnout in slow motion. That's the danger of freeze and flee. It feels easiest, but it's the slowest heartbreak. Connection feels dangerous, so both nervous systems, in essence, play dead. On the outside, it's peace, but on the inside, it's grief. Here's the twist. The problem isn't communication. It's protection. Most couples think better skills would fix everything, but you can memorize every I statement on the planet and still end up in the same fight. When it senses threat, raised voices, eye rolling, silence, it hits like a panic button. For some, that means charge forward. For others, it means shut down. Either way, the body is saying, danger, don't connect. That protection looks a little different for everyone. Some people go volcanic, lava words, fast heartbeat, sharp tone, and others turn to stone, numb, distant, and flat. It's the same lava, just different volcanoes. Here's the painful irony. Both people think the other one is the problem. You think, if they'd stop shutting down, I could relax. They think, if you'd stop coming at me, I could open up. But it's the same fire underneath. The fear of being unloved or unsafe. So instead of asking who started it, try asking, what is this reaction actually protecting? The pursuer's protest protects against abandonment. The withdrawer's silence protects against failure. When you see that every defensive move starts as a survival strategy, something can start to shift. Compassion begins to sneak in. You stop diagnosing your relationship as broken and start seeing it as maybe brilliant, but just miswired. Your system isn't sabotaging you. It's trying to keep you alive. It just hasn't realized that love isn't a threat anymore. So when you start seeing this loop as the problem and not your partner, everything starts to soften. The lava will cool, the air will clear, and from that calmer place, connection actually has a fighting chance. Let's look under the hood for a second. Your brain doesn't care that it's your partner in front of you. It's just going to register emotional threat the same way it registers a physical one. Heart rate spikes, adrenaline floods, and your prefrontal cortex, the calm, logical part, goes offline. That's why you think, I don't even recognize myself in those moments. You literally don't have access to your best self until the threat detector says it's safe again. In EFT terms, that alarm is the attachment system lighting up. When it goes off, your nervous system grabs its oldest survival script. Fight shows up as blame. Flight looks like retreat. Freeze feels like numbness. And fawn hides as appeasing. None of these are conscious choices. They're reflexes. They once protected you from real pain, long before this relationship even existed. Now, they just keep you stuck in survival instead of connection. Every one of those responses is a protest of disconnection. The fight says, I can't stand being ignored. The flight says, if I stay, I'll get hurt. The freeze whispers, it's safer not to feel. And the fawn pleads, if I keep you happy, maybe you'll stay. They're all different ways of begging for safety and belonging, but they collide. Your reach looks like a threat to them. Their distance feels like a rejection to you. And suddenly, two scared bodies are trying to outprotect each other. You're not reacting to your partner. You're reacting to the body's memory of danger. The amygdala, the part of your brain that focuses on emotion, doesn't timestamp pain. It just says, this feels familiar. Defend! That's why the same argument can start over nothing. Once you see that, compassion actually becomes possible for you and for them. You're both fighting for safety, just in opposite directions. Now that you know what's happening inside your body, let's look at what it sounds like in real life. Picture two moments that are going to start the same way. Your partner sighs, your chest tightens, and that electricity fills the room. In the first version, you react. Maybe you snap, maybe you shut down. The energy is fast and certain. You both leave the moment believing that the other one doesn't care. In the second version, nothing external changes except one tiny pause. That pause interrupts the autopilot long enough to remember, this isn't an enemy. This is someone whose nervous system is colliding with mine. And in that pause, you start to see the cycle instead of the story. You notice the soundtrack in your head. Here we go again. Instead of feeding it, you can breathe. Maybe you even say out loud, we're doing that thing again. It sounds simple, but the acknowledgement changes so much. Naming the loop moves it from the body to the brain. You shift from being inside a storm to watching it pass. And that's where you start to have choices. You don't have to be calm, just slower. Maybe you drop your shoulders. Maybe you say, wait, I'm getting defensive. Maybe you reach for their hand instead of your next line. Each small move tells your body, we're safe enough to stay. That's how trust repairs. It's not from grand gestures, but from small, consistent interruptions of the old loop that once protected you, but now keeps you lonely. And when one person changes their step, the dance changes. The partner might not trust it yet, but you've shifted the rhythm. What used to spiral can start to soften. You'll still have conflict for sure because you're human. But it sounds more like, I'm scared we're drifting apart instead of, you never listen. It's the same fire, but it's a different fuel. So let's make this real. Knowing your loop is powerful, but it's not the same as knowing what to do in that moment. You don't need some big system, just a tool that fits inside one breath. So this is the pause, name, and soften. Pause. Literally, stop talking. Feel your feet. Feel your butt in your seat. Feel your breath. Your body will hate this part because it wants to act and react. But every second you spend grounding buys your brain a little bit more oxygen. Don't think of it as surrendering. Think of this as strategy. It says, I'm not abandoning this. I'm protecting it from the fire. Then you name it. So you say, I think we're in Find the Bad Guy again. Or this feels like our Protest Polka. Naming it will externalize the monster. You can face it together then instead of fighting with each other. If your partner isn't ready for that language yet, you can keep it inside. My body thinks connection isn't safe right now. Naming it, that awareness starts to cool the reactivity so much faster than logic ever could. And then finally, soften. This is where you unclench your jaw, lower your tone, or say, I'm scared we're slipping. You're signaling safety to their body, not just their mind. The nervous system listens to warmth, not perfection. You can't control whether they soften too, but softness is contagious. One nervous system steadies, the other starts to match it. When you come with vulnerability, it feels safer to come back to you with vulnerability. That's called co-regulation. Two bodies learning to calm together instead of competing against each other. To be fair, you're not going to nail this every time. Sometimes you'll pause too late, or the softening feels fake, and that's okay. Remember, the goal is not perfection. It's practice. Every imperfect try rewires the loop towards safety. Because breaking the cycle isn't about never fighting again. It's about remembering, mid-fight, that you have other options now. You're not stuck because you're broken. You're stuck because your body learned a dance that once made sense, but doesn't anymore. These cycles aren't proof of incompatibility between you and your partner. They're proof that connection matters enough to trigger your oldest survival instincts. The moment you start seeing the loop as a shared enemy, that's when the energy starts to shift. What used to feel like chaos starts looking a lot more like choreography. And what we can recognize and see in patterns, we can start to rewire. Awareness is the first repair. So this work is messy. Like I said, you'll pause too late, you'll name it wrong, you'll soften, and your partner will roll their eyes. That's okay. Growth is not linear. It's circular. You're learning to spin slower. Every time you notice the loop sooner, that's progress. Every calmer breath before reacting is your nervous healing in real time. That's progress. And if you're thinking, well, all this sounds great, but my partner would never do this, that's also normal. Most people start this work alone. Your nervous system doesn't need their permission to shift. When one person moves differently, the whole system starts to recalibrate. You're teaching your relationship a new language, one where safety, not survival, runs the show. So maybe tonight, when the sigh happens or the tone shifts, you'll take one breath longer before reacting. You'll remember that beneath the armor, you both just want to feel close. Maybe you'll say something simple like, hey, I think we lost each other there. That's it. No script, just a tiny pause that keeps the door open. Because love is not about never fighting. It's about finding your way back over and over again. If you take nothing else from today, remember this. Fights are not proof you're failing. They're proof that you still care. People who don't care don't fight. They disconnect. The fact that you still circle back to the same argument means your body hasn't given up on love. It's just running old code. Every sigh, every retreat, every raised voice is a signal flare for closeness. Once you stop treating those signals as attacks, you can start answering the real question underneath. Do you still choose me? So next time you feel yourself slipping into that old rhythm, try catching it mid-beat. Name the pattern, take the pause, soften where you can. You're not always going to get it right, but every small interruption builds safety. And safety is the foundation of every repair, every apology, every inside joke that survives the storm. You don't need to overhaul your relationship. You just need to notice when your body leaves love and practice coming home sooner. And if you happen to live in the state of Washington, I currently have 1 to 2 openings in my private practice for new therapy clients. If you've been wanting support to break old patterns and build more secure, connected relationships, you can learn more or inquire at www.meaningfuljourneycounseling.com. And don't worry, I'll leave it in my show notes. That's it for today's episode of Coupled With. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to hit subscribe so you never miss what's next. And if you found it helpful, please share it with a friend or leave a quick rating and review. It really helps more than you know. And if you're curious about how we might work together or want more resources to strengthen your relationship, head over to my website, www.drrachelorleck.com. You'll find free tools, podcast extras, and ways to go deeper. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.